far, only 2 drivers have made more than 3 laps, and those are the 2 Ganassi cars. But Larson and McMurray, here's a big group waiting their turn so that a draft from another car doesn't affect your run. So how do you pass the time in a 4-hour practice session?
So you need to tell us a joke for every run here to pass the time.
You want me to tell you jokes? Then I'm afraid I only know about the chicken and the road thing.
And I only know rated R do.
That's how you pass it down. But that's why we have 4 hours. Look, you're going to sit down here on pit road for several minutes waiting for your turn to go out. So until we get down to that last 10 or 15 minutes, and then it's like a mad rush. Everybody wants to go out at once.
There's always that one last change is going to make a big difference.
Just needed one more lap. Been here 4 hours, I just needed one more lap.
Ryan Newman leading his lap.
Former Daytona 500 winner, currently 11th.
Really anxious to see Richard Childress racing this year and see how they step things up. You know, we saw glimpses and moments where they were doing really well at times, but we need to see more consistency. But if they can do that this year, I really believe this team can kind of break out of what we've seen in the past couple of years and get to that next level and really compete for more race wins.
Now, Larry, 16 just was not the greatest season for RCR.
No, and I mean, the winless streak that they're on, they have not won a race since Kevin Harvick left there. You have to go all the way back to the end of 2013 when he won the Phoenix race. So, yeah, I know they're talking about, winning a championship, talking about making the playoffs, but I think the biggest thing is winning a race. Guys, I want to point out something. Remember what you said at the top of the show, Mike? Daytona 500 front row qualifying. Practice. Tomorrow is 1 lap qualifying. You don't get 2. You don't get 3 laps. And right now, I'm seeing Joey Logano's 7th quickest. He ran that 190.9 1 lap. Everybody above him ran 2 or 3 laps. If you're trying to test something, that's okay. But that's not indicative of how quick you can run on 1 lap.
Larry, what I always wonder when we see them make their first run, a lot of times I know our team would go and make 2 or 3 laps because you're sitting on pit road, everything's cool, you want to heat everything up because you think when you go to make that 1 qualifying lap, it's 1 warm-up and then 1 on the clock, you'll be able to have everything heated up during that moment. So I know we were always trying to be consistent, so we would run 3 laps, but I do agree with you. That's pretty impressive for them to run that lap and only make it 1 lap.
There's only 2 things I want cool, my water and my driveway.
Well, Ford, good luck, now occupy the first 4 spots. Ricky Stenhouse now 2nd quickest in his 17 to Brad Keselowski, Clint Boyer, and Trevor Bayne. Keselowski's 2nd of 2 laps was his fastest. Stenhouse's 4th of 4 laps. Bayne to the top on his 3rd lap. How about that?
Bring it to us. Take it easy on the splitter. Take it easy on the splitter. Bring it to us this time.
Just don't get on the brakes hard way, Stan. Don't just lock it down and get that splitter bouncing off the ground. They don't want to hurt it.
Well, and they want to get a good measurement because what happens is if it hits the ground too much, it starts to grind too much of that splitter off, and they don't really know where they're at on heights.
So Trevor Bayne goes to the top of the chart. Here's Matt Young.
Ford's looking strong in the speed department, 7 in the top 10, and blew almost. Kurt Busch, he's 9th fastest. He ran 2 laps, and then he brought the car back in. He radioed into Tony Gibson. The water temperature had climbed to about 270, and that was pretty much the max that they would like to see. And remember, everything is a learning process with this new Ford. And Tony Gibson was working more on the grill opening, how much tape he can put on that front equates to how much faster that water temperature climbs when they're in qualifying trim. So they're going to cool it down, send him back out about another 6 minutes here on the 41.
What I love so much about this year, and you guys can help me with this, I just feel something brewing with manufacturers this year. It just seems more heightened than I've seen in the past. And maybe it's just this one move of Stuart Haas going from Chevrolet to Ford. And now there's more pressure on RCR and Hendrick Motorsports to carry that Chevy banner. And there's more pressure, I think, on the Ford group as to stepping up to compete with, really the Toyotas and Chevrolets who have dominated recently.
I think you're right, and I'll add another element. Furniture Row Racing moving to being a two-car team and proving last year they were not just a satellite of Joe Gibbs Racing. They're competing as equals. And I think the playing field between manufacturers is the most level that it's been in a long, long time.
I think, but what happened with Stuart Haas, surprisingly moving to Ford, I think that opened the door for some really, amongst the owners and the manufacturers, I think that opened the door for some pretty good rivalries this year, as you said.
Here's Jamie.
And teammates again with Kevin Harvick now is Clint Boyer, and I just poked my head in the window and said, well, what do you think? Your first run out with this team and this car? And he said, she's fast. And he said, I'm sitting in this seat, I feel like I'm rich. It's just so comfortable. So he definitely means business. He said Mike Buggeravich is doing a great job. They don't even have much tape on the grill, so they're going to play around with that, add a little bit more, and see if they can go out and find a bit more speed. But overall, he's really happy and thrilled to be here and what the car's showing so far.
Hey, Jamie, I need you to remind Clint that I know he lives a pretty simple life, but he is rich, but he can also afford to take that rust off that helmet.
How cool is that?
That's very cool.
That's all hand-painted. It's very intricate.
So Clint Boyer replaces Tony Stewart. They change from Chevrolet to Ford. You know, Clint was a body man. He can paint, okay? He was a body man before he became a full-time racer. But he drives around his hometown now in a rat rod. You know, a car done in primer, but pinstripe and a little faux patina. And that's a rusty bucket.
Yes, it is.
That's old school, guys.
I feel bad for Pegasus on there, you know?
Yeah, that's old school.
A flying red horse.
But you know, I bet the last time Clint Boyer was in the top 10 in practice may have been 2 years ago.
Well, I want to say a word about Harry Scott, because that's who Boyer drove last year. And Harry Scott expanded his one-car team to a two-car team last year to accommodate Clint Boyer's off-season before he went to replace Tony Stewart. And Harry and his team did everything they could to ramp up to field two competitive cars, and Harry admitted, he said, we took on too much, too soon, it didn't go well. They gave it a valiant effort, but at the end of the season, that team shut its doors.
And Mike, you bring up a really interesting conversation because it was a very unique situation here. Clint Boyer is in a year where he didn't have the ride at Stewart Haas because Tony Stewart was going to retire that year. They had to find a place, and he had to find a place where he felt like he could go out and get the best opportunity. And if you looked at Harry Scott's organization prior to that, they actually had some pretty good runs. Unfortunately, it was just too overwhelming for them to take on, and really hurt the whole organization at Harry Scott Racing, actually.
I know how you make a small fortune in racing. You start with a big one.
And I feel bad for Harry. He has stepped away from the sport, kind of like Carl Edwards did, but shuttered the team, stepped away, closed down his championship-winning K&N team that he had with Justin Marks. And I talked to him at that banquet, and he said, I might be back. He said, I might not be done with this sport. I love the sport. Yeah. He said, but last year was a really tough.
His intentions were all good.
Yeah.
Yes.
Owners come in and they want to be at the Hendrick Motorsports level, or they want to be at the Stewart Haas level overnight. And you spend a lot of money trying to catch up. And you're not going to catch up with the Hendrick Motorsports, been in business over 25 years, or Childress, or any of those guys. You don't catch up with them overnight. And you can't spin your way to the top.
I'd like to know how many of the new car owners come in and actually take tours through Hendrick Motorsports and Joe Gibbs Racing and Penske Racing, Stewart Haas, because I think if you walk through those organizations, it's a pretty big wake-up call to understand just how much goes into getting to that level.
They're factories. We used to race out of shops, little 10,000, maybe 20,000 square foot shops. These things are factories. We're talking about Penske over got 450,000 square feet of racing shop. I mean, that's huge.
And here are some of the teams that we see trying to get to that level. We saw Joey Gase a second ago from BK Racing. And here we got Matt DiBenedetto in a new ride for Go Fast Racing for 2017. A lot of movement among drivers there in that area.
I like this guy. I love his attitude. I think he's got some great talent as well, but he's got a lot of personality, whether it be on social media or in his interviews or just, out through the garage area. A great guy. You want a guy like this to be successful, and I hope they find some success with this team this year.
What's his nickname? Guido?
I believe that's his middle name.
I think it
He needs to be called Guns. Did you see some of the they were showing some pictures I saw on social media where he was flexing his muscles. That guy has some big guns.
But you know what helps you here at Daytona and in Talladega as well is you can go get an engine from Ralph Shades. You can go get an engine from Hendrick Motor. You can get some good engines, and that's really one of the big things that makes you good down here is having that horsepower.
Yeah, those alliances can really get you jump started to get to that level. It might not get you there, but it's certainly a great jump start. But as you know, you're going to pay for it.
Oh, yeah.
Jimmy Johnson just did a slow lap around the track apron. Larry, I'm puzzled.
Yeah, I mean, he never even got up to speed. He just had left pit road, so yeah, something he didn't like, something he felt or something he saw, because he's coming right back.
Larry, what's the mastermind Chad Canals up to?
There's a method to the madness, I can promise you that.
Chad told me to go out, warm it up, run one lap, and bring it back in.
And that may very well be it. Let's get some heat and everything, then we'll cool her down.
Yeah, I think that's probably what it was.
I don't know about that.
But I've said this about Jimmy Johnson over and over again. If that's what Chad tells him to do, he doesn't say why. He doesn't say, that's dumb, I don't think we should do that. He just does it. He's the perfect driver for Chad Canals.
Oh, they make one heck of a team.
7 championships. Proof of that pudding.
You have to believe in one another. You have to have a lot of confidence in one another, and you have to have complete trust. And these guys have been through a lot over the years, but boy, do they trust one another, and they get the results.
All right, 30 minutes of practice are complete. We're going to make a wholesale change. Tune your TV to FS1 for the rest of Daytona 500 qualifying practice right after this break.